Daniel Foster wiped down the last table at Morrison's cafe where he worked the morning shift. His hands were rough from years of hard work, but he moved with practiced efficiency at 48 years old. Daniel had learned that honest work was nothing to be ashamed of. He had been a single father for 5 years now, raising his son Jake alone. Jake was 16 and everything Daniel lived for. After Daniel's wife left them for a life she said was more exciting, Daniel had to start over. He had been a construction foreman back then, but an injury to his back changed everything. Now he worked 2 jobs to keep their small apartment and put food on the table. The cafe job paid the bills, and at night he did security work at a warehouse. It was Tuesday morning, and the cafe was busy with the usual crowd business. People grabbed coffee before meeting students worked on laptops in the corner. Daniel moved between tables, refilling cups and clearing dishes. He noticed when the woman walked in. She stood out immediately dressed in an elegant cream-colored dress with perfectly styled blonde hair. She carried herself with confidence. She looked to be in her late 40s and seemed slightly out of place in the modest neighborhood cafe. She ordered a latte and sat near the window making phone calls. Daniel could tell she was someone important. By the way, she spoke calm and authoritative. He brought her latte to the table. "Here you go, ma'am," he said with a polite smile. She looked up and thanked him distractedly. Her attention was already back on her phone. Daniel returned to his work. 20 minutes later, he was behind the counter when he heard the bell above, the door chime. 2 men in black masks burst into the cafe. Everyone freeze. One of them shouted. The taller one had a gun. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest, but his mind went clear. He had been in tough situations before. Years ago, before his injury, he had served in the National Guard. He knew how to stay calm under pressure. The shorter masked man started, grabbing phones and wallets from the terrified customers. The one with the gun kept it trained on the room. Then Daniel saw him focus on the blonde woman near the window. "You," he barked. "That's a nice watch. Hand it over. And that purse." The woman's face went pale, but she lifted her chin. She started to reach for her watch, but her hands were shaking. The gunman moved closer to her. "Hurry up," he snarled. Daniel saw the fear in her eyes. He saw the way the gunman's finger rested too casually on the trigger. He thought of Jake. He thought of coming home tonight. But he also thought of who he was, who he had always been, someone who protected others. He moved before he could talk himself out of it. Daniel came around the counter silently. The gunman was focused entirely on the woman in 3 quick steps. Daniel was behind him. He grabbed the gun hand and twisted it up and away. The weapon discharged into the ceiling, sending plaster raining down. People screamed. Daniel used his weight and momentum to slam the gunman against a table. The gun clattered to the floor. The second masked man dropped the bag of stolen items and rushed at Daniel. But Daniel was ready. He caught the man's arm and used a move from his military training to flip him over his hip. The man crashed into chairs and lay groaning. The first gunman was scrambling for the gun. Daniel kicked it away, sending it skidding under the pastry case. Then he grabbed the man and pinned him face down on the floor. "Stay down," Daniel commanded. His voice was steel. "Someone call the police." A young man near the door already had his phone out. "They're coming," he said shakily. The blonde woman stood frozen, her hand still at her throat. She was staring at Daniel with wide eyes. Daniel kept the gunman pinned until he heard sirens approaching. The second robber tried to get up, but Daniel fixed him with a look. "Don't even think about it." The man collapsed back onto the floor within minutes. Police officers flooded into the cafe. They handcuffed both robbers and took statements from everyone. Daniel's manager, Rosa, came over and hugged him. "You could have been killed," she said, tears in her eyes. Daniel shrugged. "I just did what needed doing." The blonde woman approached him. Her composure had returned, but Daniel could see she was still shaken. She extended her hand. "I am Victoria Ashford," she said. "What you did was extraordinarily brave." Daniel shook her hand. "Daniel Foster, I am glad you are okay." Victoria held his hand a moment longer than necessary. She seemed to be studying his face. "You work here?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Morning shift. I also work security at night." Victoria nodded slowly. "Mr. Foster, I would very much like to thank you properly." May I buy you lunch? Daniel glanced at Rosa, who nodded encouragingly. Go on, Daniel, she said. Take the rest of the day, you have earned it. Daniel looked down at his work uniform. I am not really dressed for anything fancy. Victoria smiled. There is a diner 2 blocks from here, best burgers in the city. I am told nothing fancy required. They walked to the diner together. The adrenaline was wearing off, and Daniel felt his hands start to shake slightly. Victoria noticed the aftermath is often worse than the moment itself. She said, gently, your body is processing everything. Now you have experience with this sort of thing, Daniel asked. Victoria's expression grew complicated in a way. Yes, I have been in some difficult situations in my career. They found a booth in the back of the diner. A tired-looking waitress brought menus and coffee. So Victoria said after they ordered, Tell me about yourself. Daniel Foster. Daniel shrugged. Not much to tell. I am a single dad. My son Jake is 16. I work 2 jobs to support us. Used to be in construction, but I hurt my back. Now I do what I can. Victoria listened with complete attention. What about Jake? What is he like? Daniel's face transformed when he talked about his son. Jake is incredible, smart as a whip. He wants to be an engineer. He is already taking advanced math classes. He helps me fix anything that breaks in our apartment. He is the best thing in my life. Victoria smiled warmly. He is lucky to have you. Daniel looked down at his coffee. I am the lucky one. After his mom left, it was just us against the world. He never complained, never acted out. He just worked hard and stayed positive. I do not know what I did to deserve a kid like that. Their food arrived as they ate. Victoria asked more questions. She wanted to know about Daniel's military service, about his construction work, about his dreams for Jake's future. Daniel found himself opening up in a way he rarely did. There was something about Victoria that made him feel understood. Finally, Daniel turned the questions around. What about you? What do you do? Victoria set down her burger. I run a company, Ashford Technologies. We develop software for healthcare systems. Daniel's eyes widened. Ashford Technologies, I have heard of that. You are not just successful, you are. Victoria laughed. Rich, yes, very. But I started with nothing, Daniel. I grew up in a trailer park. My mother cleaned houses. I put myself through community college, then transferred to a state school. I built my company from my apartment with a $5,000 loan. She paused. I say this not to brag, but because I recognize something in you. You are like I was working hard, sacrificing for someone you love, doing whatever it takes. Daniel felt his throat tighten. I am just trying to give Jake a better life. That is all any good parent does. Victoria said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. I want you to come see me tomorrow at my office, please. Daniel took the card hesitantly. Why? Victoria met his eyes. Because I need someone I can trust, and because I think I can help you the way others helped me when I was starting out. Daniel wanted to refuse. Pride made him want to say he did not need charity. But then he thought of Jake, of college tuition, of opportunities. Okay, he said, I will come the next day. Daniel put on his only suit. It was old and a bit tight, but it was. He took the bus across town to the gleaming tower that housed Ashford Technologies. The lobby was all glass and steel. Daniel felt out of place immediately, but the receptionist smiled warmly when he gave his name. Mr. Foster, Miss Ashford is expecting you. Please take the executive elevator to the 30th floor. The elevator opened directly into a stunning office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Victoria stood looking out at the view. She turned when she heard him. Daniel, thank you for coming. Please sit down. They sat in leather chairs by the window. Daniel, you have a decision to make. Victoria began. I run a large company. We have hundreds of employees, but the truth is I struggle to find people I can truly trust, people with integrity, real courage. Yesterday in that cafe, you showed me who you are. She leaned forward. I need a head of security, someone to oversee safety for all our facilities and personnel, someone who understands how to protect people, not just property. The job pays $120,000 a year. Full benefits, and a budget to hire your own team. Daniel felt dizzy. Miss Ashford, Victoria, please. Daniel swallowed. Victoria, I am grateful, but I have no college degree. I have been out of any serious security work for years. I do not know if I am qualified." Victoria smiled. "I spent yesterday evening making phone calls. I spoke to your former commander in the National Guard. I spoke to the construction company where you were a foreman. I spoke to 3 of your co-workers at the cafe. Every single person said the same thing. Daniel Foster is the most reliable, trustworthy, hard-working person they know." She stood and walked to her desk, returning with a folder. "I am not offering you this job because I feel sorry for you. I am offering it because you are exactly what my company needs. But Daniel, there is something else. Something I need to tell you." Daniel waited. His heart was pounding. 26 years ago, Victoria began. "I was a single mother. My daughter was 2 years old. Her father had left us. I was working 3 jobs trying to survive." She sat back down one night. "I was walking home from my evening shift at a diner. It was late. I was in a bad neighborhood. 2 men tried to rob me. One had a knife." Daniel's eyes widened. A man intervened. Victoria continued. "He was young, maybe 22. He worked construction. He saw what was happening, and he did not hesitate. He fought those men off, and he made sure I got home safely." Her eyes filled with tears. "He told me his name was Danny. He had kind eyes and rough hands. He told me to stay strong for my daughter. He said things would get better if I kept working hard and stayed honest." Daniel felt a strange sensation in his chest. "I never forgot him," Victoria said. "A few years later, I tried to find him to thank him, but he had moved no forwarding address. I always wondered what happened to him." Daniel's hands were shaking. "What was his last name?" "Foster." Victoria said softly. "Danny Foster." The room seemed to tilt. Daniel stood up and walked to the window. He pressed his hand against the cool glass. "I was 22, he said quietly. "I was working construction downtown. I remember she had a little girl. You kept her picture in your wallet." Victoria stood and came to stand beside him. "I kept working hard." She said, "I never forgot what you told me when things got difficult. I remembered that someone had believed in me enough to risk himself for me. That kindness, it changed my life." Daniel turned to her. "Your daughter," Victoria smiled through tears. "She is a doctor now, pediatric oncologist. She helps sick children. She is married. I have 2 grandchildren." Daniel felt tears running down his own face. "I am so glad," he whispered. "I am so glad you made it." They stood together looking out at the city. "So you see," Victoria said, "this is not charity. This is gratitude. This is recognizing that some debts can never be fully repaid, but we can try." Daniel thought of Jake, of college applications, of dreams that seemed impossible yesterday. "When do I start?" he asked. "Monday," Victoria said. "And Daniel bring Jake. I would like to meet him that evening." Daniel sat Jake down in their small kitchen. He told him everything about the cafe, about Victoria, about what had happened 26 years ago. Jake listened with wide eyes. "Dad," Jake said, "finally you are like a superhero." Daniel laughed. "No, I am just someone who tries to do the right thing." Jake shook his head. "That is exactly what a superhero is." The following Monday, Daniel started his new job. He wore a new suit that actually fit. Victoria introduced him to the staff. She told them Daniel was someone she had known for years, someone she trusted completely. Over the next months, Daniel built a security team he was proud of. He hired veterans who needed work, people who had fallen on hard times but had good hearts. He created protocols that kept people safe. He was good at his job because he understood what mattered. Not systems people. Jake thrived too. Victoria set up a college fund for him. She mentored him, encouraging his interest in engineering. She introduced him to professors and professionals. When Jake asked why she was doing so much, Victoria told him the truth. "Because your father saved my life twice. Once when I was struggling to survive, and once when I was successful enough to forget what really matters. Your father reminded me that courage and kindness are worth more than anything." 2 years later, Daniel walked Jake across the stage at his high school graduation. Jake had been accepted to a top engineering program with a full scholarship. In the audience, Victoria sat with her daughter and grandchildren. After the ceremony, they all went to dinner together at the restaurant. Victoria raised her glass to Daniel. She said, "Who taught me that one moment of courage can echo through decades?" and to Jake, who reminds us that the next generation is always worth fighting for. Daniel raised his own glass to second chances, he said, and to people who never forget where they came from. Jake looked around the table at the family they had built not through blood, but through kindness and gratitude. Sometimes he thought the universe has a strange way of bringing people together. His father had saved a struggling young mother decades ago. That mother had become successful and powerful, and when she had the chance, she had reached back and lifted them up. It was not about debt. It was about recognizing that we are all connected, that the good we do comes back to us in unexpected ways that night. As Daniel drove home with Jake, he felt something he had not felt in years. Peace, not because his problems were solved, but because he understood finally that he had always been rich. Rich in the things that mattered. Courage, integrity, love, the job, and the money were wonderful. But the real gift was knowing that his choices had mattered, that the young man who had stopped to help a stranger decades ago had planted a seed that had grown into something beautiful. Victoria had not forgotten, and now she was making sure others would not be forgotten either. Together they had created a legacy, one built not on wealth, but on the simple revolutionary idea that people are worth saving. That courage is worth celebrating. That kindness is worth remembering. If this story moved you, please like and share it with someone who needs to remember that their good deeds matter even when they think no one is watching. Subscribe for more stories about courage, kindness, and the unexpected ways our lives connect. Leave a comment telling us about a time someone helped you or a time you helped someone else. Every act of kindness creates ripples we cannot see. Thank you for listening.